Everyone, Alicia here, and in this session, we're going to chat through health, safety, and preparation. So just really quickly, first, some housekeeping. Do you have a passport? And is it valid for 6 months beyond your return date? If not, you want to make sure that you are applying for one as soon as possible. Passport processing times have definitely been a little delayed recently. So if you are still waiting on yours, you're in that process, definitely be in touch with your program and work with them on any kind of dates, deadlines that you have for that. And the second thing would be visas. Do you need one? Do you know if you need one? If you don't know, ask your program. If you do know you need one, make sure you are following any deadlines given to you by your program. This is really important because visa deadlines can be really, really strict and can be really difficult to get if you don't go through the channels that your program advises you to do. So sometimes programs will do group processing, sometimes they will advise that you need to do it on your own. So really make sure that you're paying very close attention to those dates, deadlines, processes. Our office is always happy to help look over things, but a lot of times we would refer back to the program because they're really the experts. They keep up to date on all of the very detailed specifics of what you need to do for that process. So just a few things about insurance. So one, you want to make sure that you're maintaining your US health insurance while you're abroad. So this would be whatever US health insurance you have that covers you while at Brandeis. It might be the Brandeis plan. It might be a plan that you're on under your family that counts while you're at Brandeis. All of those options are completely fine, but you want to make sure that you remain under that health insurance coverage that covers you while you're in the US. In addition to that, you'll then have an additional level of coverage that would be your international medical insurance. And this is going to be, for most students, provided by their program directly. Or if your program doesn't provide that, or they don't provide an adequate level of coverage, Brandeis would automatically sign you up for something called CISI, which does have that coverage and that protection. So this insurance is going to cover you for things while you're abroad. Maybe that's a trip to the doctor. Maybe that's something like you get really sick and you have to come home and it's covering some of those flight costs or a cost for a family member to come and be with you. So it has these additional levels of coverage that we want you to have while you're abroad, just in case you need them. Most of these insurance won't include personal property insurance, so that's something to look into. Many times something like a renter's insurance or maybe a homeowner's insurance through your family's policy would already have this. I know that mine does. So you can look into that, but that can cover things like a stolen laptop or phone, things like that. So just to look into that and see exactly what that covers and decide if it's something that you want to purchase additionally if you need to. And then lastly, just by being a Brandeis student, you're automatically covered under something called Zurich Travel Assistance. So Zurich has everything from kind of security monitoring while you're abroad to some levels of health coverage while you're there to emergency assistance. So there's nothing you need to do to sign up for this, but we will have information in your online account as to how you can access their portal. And it's good to just go ahead and follow those instructions, have that information on hand. You can go ahead and log in and see things about the place that you're going and kind of already have that information available should you need it. One thing I will note that Zurich does have that sometimes the other insurances don't have is they do have access to mental health coverage while abroad, and they do have some virtual resources for that. So if you have any questions about accessing that, always talk to one of your study abroad advisors and we're happy to help. A few tips just overall about staying safe and being prepared. So one, just make sure that you're being aware of your surroundings. Not every day is 100% perfect while you're abroad. Things do happen. A lot of times this can be similar things to what you experience here in the US, but when you're abroad, you're away from family, you're away from your normal support system, it can feel much more difficult than it might if it were to happen while you were here. When you get abroad, likely your program is going to be doing an orientation with you, and that tends to be in the first couple of days. So you're jet lagged, you're excited to be there, but you're feeling a lot of different things of what's going on. But just make sure that you're really paying close attention to the safety portion of that orientation, because they're going to go over how to stay safe and resources for you while you're there. So who to contact on your program if you ever needed them. What cab companies to use. Those types of tips are always good to hear from your program because they're the firsthand advice that's living there. They know based on their own experiences being in that country and what how they've been working with other students in the past. So just make sure that you're really paying attention to that portion of orientation. Next tip is planning ahead. So if there's any sort of accommodations or resources that you might access on campus that you want to also access while you're abroad, let's go ahead and plan ahead for those. We're more than happy to help in our office with that sort of planning. A lot of times we will then work with the program closely to make sure those supports get set up. So examples of that would be academic accommodations that maybe you have here at Brandeis that you also want while abroad, mental health support that maybe you access while you're here that we need to get in place while you're abroad. Sometimes you can't always set up everything 100% in advance, but it can be much more difficult once you do get there to get those pieces going. So let us know, let your program know, and we can start working through those steps of what exactly will need to be done. Obviously, you're going a time when there's still a lot of global uncertainty in the world. And the point here is just in case that there is a big emergency or something that goes on in the city or country where you are, to make sure that you're ready to follow your program's safety plan. One, to first ensure your safety in that situation, but two, to make sure that you're letting others know that you're okay. So usually your program's going to reach out to make sure you're okay. Brandeis might reach out to make sure you're okay. Friends and family might be, and just want to make sure that you are in fact safe if there were something that was going to happen. And then we always think it's really important to talk about sexual assault and misconduct, sexual harassment, and knowing that you're going to be in a different place with different cultures. But just because something's in a different culture doesn't necessarily make that okay, or doesn't make it okay. And to know that. So if something makes you uncomfortable, it makes you uncomfortable. There's not a cultural excuse for that. And want you to know what resources and supports you do have in those situations. So the Prevention Advocacy and Resource Center PARC here at Brandeis is available to students who are abroad. They have a 24/7 support line that you can always call. That's confidential, and you could chat with someone in that office. You're always welcome to chat with advisors in our office. We are not confidential employees. So if you were to report some sort of harassment or sexual assault to us, we would have to go through more formal Title IX reporting. And usually what that means is that someone else at Brandeis would be reaching out to you to offer different resources, support, options on what you could do next. But just to know, you are welcome to chat with us, but we are not confidential employees. Also, you'll have your program staff to talk with. They are typically not considered confidential employees either, but they would be there to be able to talk with you firsthand. So someone says something that's uncomfortable to you, you could go to them and chat about what that meant, how you're processing it, and go from there. There's also online, there's going to be some other resources that kind of give more information about different cultural contexts. So definitely read that if you'd like to see some more information. So everyone right now is still studying abroad during a global pandemic or endemic now. And so it is still good to be thinking about COVID-19 and how that might be managed where you are going abroad. So these are just some things to think about further. Things like, what are the current policies where you're going or for your program? So for example, do you wear masks while you're in classroom? Do you wear masks if you go to a museum? And then thinking through, how do you feel about that? Maybe there's no mask and you feel okay with that. Maybe that's a little scary for you, but just trying to get a sense of what it looks like now. And obviously between now and when you actually go abroad, those types of things can change. But thinking about what it looks like now, how does that feel to you? What might you do to kind of make yourself feel comfortable? Maybe it's okay, people aren't wearing masks, but I'm still going to wear mine. And what is that going to look like for you for your semester? Thinking through what your program's policies are should the COVID rates change while you're there. So maybe when you get there with the end of the summer, rates are very low, but what if they get higher again while you're there? How might that change things? At what point would that change things significantly? Would courses ever go to a remote format? Would you ever have to go back to the US? What would that mean for finances? Those are the types of questions that it's always just good to see what your program's policy is, because every program is going to be a little different in that sense. And then what would happen if you would get COVID while you're abroad? What does the quarantine look like where you are? What kind of resources and supports are available to you while you're in that quarantine? And this again can vary. It's different from program to program, but knowing what that is so you know what to expect is important. And then also just make sure you're prioritizing your personal health. I would have said this before COVID-19 came around. You're starting to feel a little sick. That's a cue to you that your body's saying, I need a little bit of rest. So maybe that's, not going out to this museum and this tour for one weekend, but it's staying in and taking care of yourself for a little bit, and just really giving yourself the space and time to do that if you need that. So a few reminders under rights and responsibilities. You do remain enrolled as a Brandeis student when you study abroad. So the Brandeis rights and responsibilities do still apply to you. So make sure that you have, just refresh yourself on what all of those mean, what that means. Essentially, it's if you were to violate a program's policy, then they would report that back to Brandeis, and that would go through the student conduct process. So that's things like academic misconduct, if you were didn't cite work that you had used properly, if you had some sort of conduct concern. Those are things that the program could address in their own way, but would also notify Brandeis of, and would go through any sort of Brandeis process as well. And that's making sure that you know local laws and policies too. Obviously, these different from country to country, but making sure you're aware of those is very important. We will upload this slide to your online account so you always have it. It just has some of the resources that you have access to while you're abroad. So you'll see here some of those resources while at Brandeis, like Park or Campus Police is available to students 24/7. They'll always reroute you to a staff member from Study Abroad that you could speak with. So those are all resources that are still available to you as Brandeis students studying abroad. And then you have things like travel advisory information or information through the US State Department. You can enroll through their STEPS program, which would say, I'm studying in X country, and they'll give you different updates of things going on in that country in terms of if there's any sort of security concerns, or if there was something where they needed to know who was in that country, they would know that you were there. And then here you have the information for the Zurich travel assistance should you ever need that, but a lot of times you could just go through our office for that. And then make sure you know who your study abroad program contact is and your international insurance contact. If you have any questions, you can always email us at abroad@brandeis.edu or contact any of your study abroad advisors, and we're happy to talk through this further.